Hi, everyone. Welcome to Navigating the Now with Kira Noel from How We Heal the podcast and other online adventures, especially working with others to activate their own inner healer. So, we are in our ongoing process of discussing and sharing how to create a community of people who are awoken to reality in the real world sense and bringing their clarity and intuition to help them open up and say things that contribute to everything healing and growing. Halloween's coming up, and I was very struck by what I watched in the ongoing raids of various communities in the response of costumed characters. Exemplifying the, I guess, absurdity of the situation as well as the levity, and bringing some levity to everything that we encounter that's a struggle for us is really valid. I've been noting the kinds of ways that I see that this ongoing separation in the world. And then there are blips or pieces of connection that happen, like we just seen, I saw on many platforms, that occurred in the Middle East for a day, for a moment. There was this feeling of hopefulness. And of course, the kind of counter positioning of that with what was been going on most of the time, especially in the country that I'm broadcasting from. And there's a little bit of hopefulness and a lot of unknowns, a lot of discussion and subtext and information and editorializing of this information. Is it valid? Will it hold? Can we expect good things to happen? On the other side of that, the person who claims to have responsibility for that has returned to a country that he refuses to talk to his people and control and create community change. So I'd say it's very likely that we're getting another level of the joke is on us. And thank God people were released and are free from that nightmare, at least temporarily, and hopefully long term. So I've been noting the kinds of ways that we see separation in the world. And that's, in my own view, it's not there to inspire us. It's there to create a really strong sense of them and us. It's there to continue to develop in us this fear that we are not going to be able to trust another person, and also continue to not want to share and create communities that are, in my opinion, necessary for this overview of a healing. I'd like to see us all connecting and sharing worldwide. The responsibilities and the wonderful things that we all have on this earth to share. So again, I'm sharing from my bubble of the Northeast, in south of Albany, in the mountainous Catskill region, near the reservoir. And it's just, I think of it as a bubble. It's such an incredible place where people smile and laugh and go to dinner and raise children and play in the park. And then about a week ago, less than a week ago, I was in my home and got a text that this perverse version of authoritarian control of ICE was in my small little town in the mountains. And it sent a big firestorm of concern out. Everyone texted each other. People were not wanting to leave their homes to go to their jobs. People who are documented, who are citizens, who felt because of the way they are perceived and the way they look, they would be very likely picked up. And nobody wants that nightmare. So there's this huge event going on in the world of inequality and fear. And then in my world view, and in the view of many like me, if you go online today and look up healers or look up teachers about healing, teachers about self-awakening, teachers about reducing the division among us, There are many, and it's happening all over the world. It's happening in India, in England, it's happening in South America, it's happening in Australia, it's happening in New Zealand. You can go online in any place in the world that you live, wherever you are, there's a Google for that area. And you can look up and see that you can probably easily go online and push a button and start having teaching. Teaching is valuable if you use it, otherwise it has no value. And the teaching that I've read about and some of it I partake on of is teaching me to stand up into this little bit of a storm we're in and not be quiet. I'm choosing not to be quiet and not hide. I guess I do take a side here, and I take the side of humans, the side of unity, the side of let's stop dividing each other and creating them and us. And this lack of, in that decision, I'm also saying I'm not better than anybody else. And I'm certainly capable of many mistakes on a daily basis, which I'm told I should make as a human, and learning from them. Yet this thing that's going on feels like it's a disintegration of what connects us. So when there was that moment in our history recently of the release of hostages for both sides, and they were sides because, again, they were divided. They were told they should take sides. They've been trained to take sides. In that moment, I felt like the world kind of came together on a stage of maybe we can start to make good things happen. So I want to remind us that we, in our own inner connection, have this incredible power to grow things that we couldn't see possible until we could. Myself included, in my early 20s, I was this incredibly selfish young woman. Of course, I had the lovely trauma life childhood, and I distrusted adults in particular, and I had a hard time trusting myself. So when I was living that view of life, I didn't have this sense of community. I certainly didn't feel I could sit on a podcast or I'm sitting here with my lozenge, excuse me, I have a bit of a head cold. I didn't think I had the capacity to share about how I saw things or what they meant to me and how to grow them. So we may have to edit this out, but we're not editing this. So when I look at the outside of myself, I've always been able to see it's a reflection of me, the part of me that's struggling. So the disturbed part of me is very I can view it in the world stage. I can view it as, wow, I remember when I was a younger woman, I thought that too. I reacted that way as well. And as I've grown, I no longer do. But I see it in the world stage how much we're all having a big inner struggle. It's not just their struggle, the people that are voicing it or are trying to control it, because I think even the power mongers are trying to control, and out of a tremendous amount of fear and egocentric thinking, egocentric ideologies. But they're struggling. We're struggling to bring back that central balance, which is the center of the seesaw. So I'm not up or down too much. So removing in this today's show, which may, I hope will be to the point brief, because I so often speak about a lot and it's hard to take any of it in. Today's show is about removing interior barriers to reconnect us to our own wholeness. And the reason for that is because that is how things will shift, in my opinion. The value of doing this as an individual is extraordinary. It gives us a leaping off point. I walk from the flatlands, or sometimes in life I dug a little cave to go into. I walk from that space into the higher levels of view. And I'm able to see what others are struggling with and not look at them and judge them. So when I'm looking at removing these interior barriers to reconnect to my own personal clarity, and I like the word clarity, that's the most powerful thing I can ever do. That gives me a sensibility, a right size sensibility of self, not I have the wisdom for everyone. I'm going to tell you how to heal. I think that is not true and never has been. I have the understanding of the power of turning that switch on. And I've seen it in my life enormously. I've seen it in the lives of thousands of people that I very much participate in groups that are working to find these pieces of themselves, and there are in many parts of the world these groups and many personal relationships with people who do it, and you don't come into this clarity and go, wow, now I can really control everything. That's not what the clarity looks like. But I did realize the other day that when I talk about healing and reclaiming your own internal your inner healer and this power it has, it can sound like I'm going to become this really calm, uh, self-aware, collected human who does nothing but observes. It's so much more than that. And what I mean is I think in the positive sense of human connection and clarity, we become we become people who take action. That clarity clears away all of the background noise, the self-doubt, this inner critic. It clears away the need to figure out someone else's thinking. Why did they say that to me? I need to know. And it opens up a huge open space that I can sense, and let's call it intuition. I can intuit how I should act in this moment. And it's about, in a very direct way, being in touch with the world and the community that is around me and knowing what's the right next thing for me. And again, and what I love about that clarity is it's not to be judged. It's not to be decided afterwards, oh, that was a mistake. And maybe it will be. It's not to be muted. Let me do this quietly. It's to be activated in a way that changes the world that you are in and the world around you. So working with these simple principles, it's incredibly courageous. I started this particular part of my journey, which has been pushed and expanded because I sit and listen to what's next. And while I am in this moment, originally thought, oh, I'll never, ever, ever take a stand politically. Excuse me, but obviously I did. For human values, human rights, and civil and society, and for this planet. So if you're joining me or listening to this, even in the recorded version, you may be someone who's looking at how to develop this connection and how to remove those barriers that help stay, in those barriers and receiving them and believing in them. We're staying stuck. I was having this really great conversation today with a client about how ego, excuse me, it's just not the best day to do this. Ego is a powerful deterrent to staying. It's a powerful deterrent to investigating our inner clarity and finding our voice and our truth. So when I come to these moments when I want to share something, I have to kind of step into my heart. And it's very, it creates this feeling that I'm maybe not safe, which caused me to cough. Who knows? So the way to do this idea of I call it turning on the light, turn the light in you and keep it on all the time. So the way to do it can be very complicated, but I like to keep it really simple and effective. It involves repeating a couple of simple steps a day, and whatever those are for you. I invite, when you're listening to this, to think about, I can find this personal clarity and fill in the blank. When I'm in the shower, I find my personal clarity. When I take a walk, I get in touch with my personal clarity. when I play with my child, I'm in touch with this simple clarity. And it's simple because it's unencumbered by the incredible amount of, intellectualization, um, noise, and inherited trauma and fear. So this is a very powerful energy that we all hold. That I'm not a spiritual, I'm not someone who I would recommend to talk to about spirituality because I think it's such an individual process. But I would say I was awakened to my own lack of connection by some very traumatic events in my childhood and my young adult life, I would say. I wasn't a child at that point. So when I found out I was lost from myself, I started looking. So today, if I were to discuss with you some of the practices, and I've traveled a little and been taught by many, and there are many ways to practice finding that clarity. And then when you find it, to actually use it to activate the changes you want to make in your life. So one of the practices I took part in once or several times is this silence retreat kind of concept. So it would be the opposite of what I'm doing now. It would be me just walking by the reservoir in my area and not speaking and not playing music and not tuning anything out and just being present. Another simple, a great practice is just automatic writing, just sitting with a pen and paper. Um, I think there's a book called The Artist's Way. It's from the 90s. And the teaching is to, in your artwork, of any kind of artwork, and any activation of artwork, we're in touch with this clarity. The other, some people find it being chefs, cooking a great meal and not being triggered in your head. So, in a heartfelt way, I want to invite people who are listening to give yourself that 5 minutes a day and look for the clarity. And I mean it literally, 5 minutes. That's it. Just start with that. When I'm looking at the outside world and my mind starts to create choices and ways, I evaluate things, and of course I judge them and evaluate them from my mind's eye. I'm going to do things I feel really carefully. I feel like they're safe in their mind because I've done them a million times before. When I'm in touch with this clarity in me, very often I'm doing something I've never done, and it's challenging, thrilling, and a little scary. So I'm not, in a need today to talk at length about this because I think the message has been given. I gave you my message. I hope that we look towards the outside and find some humorous ways to hold the strangeness and respond in community of any kind, however you find it. I was looking at the cover of the New York Times, which I do every morning on my computer, on my Mac, and I read about the ongoing struggles, the possibility of new things getting better, possibility of nothing's going to change, and it was all, smoke and mirrors. And that sends me into a thought process. And yet for me, today, the thought was, well, this is still an understated gravitational change, that everything in this world is sort of shifting on its axis right now. Everything is kind of either going to pull together. I just put my hands apart, pull together, or pull apart. And I think the difference between the pulling together or pulling apart is this choice we may make in ourselves to spend the time to find our own clarity. So in my workshops, this is not a workshop, this is just an opportunity to share and grow a community of people who are looking to be clear and bring message to the world that's helpful. I always say how I describe this part of us, and each of us, is that we're each carrying a part of the puzzle. We're each carrying this little quintessential puzzle piece that, if not brought to our lives, makes it impossible to be clear for all of us to be clear. So that is it for today. Thank you for joining me or listening to me after the fact, after this live broadcast. Um, and if anyone wants to meet or talk to me or contact me about how we do this work, how I process and help people process that climb to find the truth of who they are, you can go to my website, howweheal.site, and write a contact request. All right. Thank you for joining me today. Bye.